So trying to remove the bezel to replace the cluster. You can see my lights are out. I replace this with a LCD. So the first part is really trying to get the bezel out. It doesn't have any screws holding it, but what you want to do is kind of pull this panel back from right here underneath the steering column, yank this loose, come around the other side, do the same thing, yank it loose. I pre-loosened it because I kind of needed two hands to pull from both sides of this. So once you yank this out, it should start to loosen up, and then you gotta just kind of pop it slowly through its entirety. Let's see here. As you can see, it's coming loose. It's all held by clips. It does have a couple of electrical connections behind this, probably behind those two buttons there, and behind these, which you can just unplug. But I'm going to try and pause the video for a second so I can get one of these plastic panel tools. You can kind of get those into the crevices and kind of just pull it out. I'll continue this in a second. So I was able to pull that one clip from the side by inserting that tool, and you kind of want to just work your way out from this side. Same thing on this side. Can't get your finger in there. Try and put this tool in. Lower the steering wheel out the way. So I had to push this piece up a little just to get this a little loose. There we go. Pop that out. Pop that out. Just gonna move my steering wheel down a little bit more. That's the most it'll go. Move it back so I can get this bezel out. So right up here on the top, you're gonna have some wires going into it. The back. Simply just unplug those right there, and then for the start and stop button. So I'm just going to shut the car off before I do that real quick. So basically I had to unplug one of the cables back here. Very easy, just press the tab, pop it out. Same thing on this side, you could pop that one out. Then you're going to have a little clip that's sitting right down here that is in the back, just kind of tucked in, so the wire neatly wraps around the cluster in the back, or the bezel instead, rather. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I gotta get behind here and unplug the cables going for the ignition, so that way the bezel will be free and I'll be able to pull it out. So give that a shot again here. Okay, once you have the clips out, basically it should look like this. And now it's fairly simple. You take out that 1, 2, 3, and 4. There are 4 screws holding the cluster in. You can get those out. You should be able to pull the cluster out, and then I'll continue the video with the install of the new one once I take this out. Okay, I basically took off the 4 screws, and then you kind of just finesse this thing right like this underneath and pull this forward. It is going to have some cables in the back that's going to hold it in place. You basically get that big plug out. I don't see anything in the back, at least not from this angle, that could be holding it back other than that one major harness. So let me try to unplug that and then pull this thing out. Yeah, so that looks like it was just that one plug in the back. This one, once you take that harness out, you should be able to pull the cluster right out. Should be no problem. Now, continue the video, I'm going to open up the package I received for my LCD cluster, and I'll kind of give you a little bit of an overview of it before I put it in. So number one, this basically comes with its own bezel, so you're not going to put the factory bezel back in. You're just going to have to remove the start button from the factory bezel and transfer it to here. Pretty much looks like the factory bezel, but it's slightly different, slightly deeper, because I think the LCD does not have a screen or a cover over the screen that comes that far out as like the factory one does, like this one here. It's got this huge plastic cover. I don't think the LCD has that. So let me put this down and show you what the LCD looks like here. Okay, it does come with some wiring, not a whole lot, but so far. So this looks like a GPS unit, because and a USB cable that will go on to the back of it, I guess. So we'll take a look at that when we get there. It is pretty much a standalone multimedia unit. It's not just a cluster. You could run Google Maps on it, Waze, etc. At least that's my understanding. That's the actual unit. Let me pull this out and show you. So this is the unit. It actually looks pretty nice. It's much smaller footprint than the factory cluster. It does have room to add a SIM card and an SD card on top. I don't know if I need it. I think it does have built-in memory. Should be sufficient, because I'm not planning on using it as a multimedia unit. I'll probably use it as just a cluster. It does. I did order a center console floating LCD for the Armada, which I'm gonna be putting in a little bit later. That's a bit of a bigger project, so I had to take the whole center console out. But I like this unit. It looks good. I'll go ahead and start installing it, and then show you guys any tips and tricks that I may come across, because I have no idea yet. So I kind of went back and forth to take a look at the connectors and how that kind of works. So it looks like this connector, that's for the buttons, top up here, and this connector up here is kind of gonna become useless. The cluster, the new one, has its own plugs that go in for the use of those buttons. So they will plug into the bezel. From the car, mainly you plug in the main harness, which is back there. You do connect that USB cable I was talking about earlier back here, and the GPS connector back here. So I'll probably stick the GPS connector somewhere on top of the dash here, where it has the least amount of resistance, and probably still be accurate in terms of being able to read and connect. So I'll try and find a good spot for it in there to hide that. I'll go ahead and wire this up, and then continue the video from there. Yeah, one more point I wanted to make was about the bezel. So I did transfer the switch over. So there's essentially only two plugs that are still coming from the car that are going to go back into the start and stop switch. So there'll be the small white plug back there and the brown plug that kind of goes into where the start and stop button is. This connector here will use a wire coming from the new cluster, as the top switches will also use the wires going from the cluster. So they're not going to be using the wires that are coming out of the car, so we're just going to ignore those when we're putting these in. So let me go ahead and wire the USB cable and wire the GPS connector, and then plug in the harness. I'm going to screw the cluster back into its place, and then I'll start connecting the wires to the bezel, and then we'll wrap it up and see what it looks like. So I've got the USB cable plugged in here, into the spot where it needs to go. The GPS cable here, I still have the GPS sensor in my hand. Like I said, I'm probably going to stick it underneath the dash here so it doesn't get in the way. And then the USB cable, I don't know, it's hard to see here, but I routed it down near where the OBD2 connector is. I'm just going to tie it down there, so if I ever need to access it and need to upload anything, I could access it from there. I'm not planning on using it for anything else. I don't even know what it's for yet till I start playing around with the unit. But it might be for system updates, or it might be for something else to connect multimedia. I'm not really sure yet. All right, so let me go ahead and put this cluster in, and then I'll continue from there. All right, I got the cluster fitted in. It looks pretty good. All the screw holes line up perfectly. I put the GPS sensor going up underneath the dash here. Now I'm going to wire up these connectors. Are going to go into the bezel, so it's going to get a little tight, so it'll be hard for me to record while I do that. And these plugs, again, you're going to ignore one of them. Only I think these two are the ones that'll fit back into the ignition. This one definitely, and I think the other one is this smaller one that goes in. This one you kind of ignore. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'll continue from there. Harder to get the view from the back of it, but I could try and show you from here. The connectors kind of go into their respective spots. Then there's a couple more I gotta connect. One that's this one here. I think it says it's for a mic or something like that. And then the ignition one. I'm gonna put that into the back of the bezel. Then we're gonna squeeze the bezel back into place, and I'll show you the fitment after it's in. And then we'll start it up and take a look. Well, the bezel's in. It's pretty good. I wouldn't say it's exactly too much off from the factory one. There's not really any gaps. It's kind of hard to see. I'll put some light on this one right here. So really, you don't see a whole bunch of gaps or anything. I do need to wipe this down when I'm done with the install. Right now I'm gonna pop the panels back in. All right, got it all in. So this is what the panel looks like first startup. X-band, K-band. So they did tell me that it was gonna come in and be in the kilometers and Celsius, which is not that big of a deal. We can, they told me that you could change that to miles, no problem. The only thing I'm worried about here is getting my odometer reading, which I think I need to give them a call and figure that out. They told me that you could enter your mileage as you have it. So go ahead. So that's basically what it looks like. I like it. Think it looks pretty good. I still have that screen protector I gotta take out. Shows about, I don't know if it's touchscreen or what. Let's try to get this out. GPS connected. So if we select the sport, I wonder how do you select it? Alright, I'm gonna have to play with this a little bit to figure it out, and I'll continue. Okay, so far I figured out the styles. It has like 3 of them, and then you can go up and down from this one. So let me select the sport. The sport kind of looks like that, and then if you go to classic, classic was the first one that was there. Go into the menu here. So let's say vehicle settings. Things should be the same as what we used to have. Let's see here. Okay, it's back. see what's on system settings. Language. Okay. Okay, get out of that one. So I think that MCU update is probably something that I need to probably do. I'm trying to find settings so I can change some of this mileage, kilometer stuff. No. Okay, so there you have it. There's still some kinks that I need to figure out. I need to get the mileage updated and change it from kilometers to miles, and then change the temperature obviously from Celsius to Fahrenheit. So I'll keep everybody posted. Seems to look pretty good, relatively accurate. So keeps up pretty good, the RPM gauge, and it looks a lot better. I mean, I like it. I'm pretty happy with it. It's definitely much better than looking at blown out lights on your RPM and speedometer. So all right, thanks guys.